Please, take this.
We have no use for your trinkets. We survive on strength alone.
In the rugged peaks of the Appalachian Mountains, where the mist clung to the ancient pines like a lover's whisper and the wind howled secrets through the valleys, lived Elias Thorne, a poor mountain man whose life was as weathered as the rocks he called home. Elias was a man of few words and even fewer possessions, his cabin a humble shack pieced together from salvaged timber and rusted nails, heated by a flickering wood stove that battled the relentless chill. He scraped by on what the land provided, trapping rabbits, foraging berries, and occasionally trading furs in the distant town of Willow Creek, a place he visited only when desperation gnawed at his belly like a starved wolf. His days blurred into one another, marked by the rhythm of sunrise and sunset, the call of distant eagles, and the solitary echo of his axe-splitting logs. Elias had long ago resigned himself to a life alone, his family gone to the grave years before, taken by the fever that swept through the hills like a vengeful spirit, leaving him with scars deeper than any blade could carve. He was 35, his face etched with lines from squinting against the sun and snow, his hands calloused from labor, his heart a fortress against the world. But fate, that capricious spinner of threads, had other plans for Elias on that fateful autumn day when the leaves burned red and gold like embers in the forest. Word had spread through the whispers of travelers that a peculiar auction was to be held in Willow Creek, a gathering of the desperate and the curious, where oddities and relics from far-off lands were bartered for coin. Elias had no interest in such frivolities, his pockets held only a single dollar, a crumpled bill earned from selling a fox pelt to a passing merchant. Yet, something inexplicable drew him down the winding path, his boots crunching over fallen leaves as the town emerged from the fog, its wooden storefronts and lantern-lit streets buzzing with an unusual energy. The auction was set in the old barn on the edge of town, its doors creaking open to reveal a motley crowd, farmers in threadbare overalls, merchants with sly grins, and wanderers with eyes shadowed by unknown pasts. The auctioneer, a portly man named Harlan with a voice like thunder, banged his gavel on a makeshift podium, calling the assembly to order as items paraded forth: rusted tools, faded quilts, a peculiar clock that ticked backward. Elias lingered at the back, his broad shoulders hunched, feeling out of place amid the clamor. But then, the mood shifted. A hush fell over the crowd as Harlan announced the final lot, his words dripping with intrigue. And now, gentlemen, and ladies, if any dare, the mystery of the evening. A hooded woman, brought from the shadowed coasts, seeking a new path in these hills. Bidding starts at $1. From the dim recesses of the barn emerged a figure cloaked in a heavy woolen hood, her form slender yet poised, chains lightly binding her wrists as if she were a captive from some forgotten tale. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Some said she was a runaway bride, others a witch fleeing persecution, but none knew the truth. Elias's heart stuttered. He had no intention of bidding, no desire for company, yet as the auctioneer's calls echoed, $1, do I hear one? And silence met his plea. Elias's hand rose almost of its own accord. $1, he grunted, his voice rough as gravel. The gavel fell with a crack, and just like that, the hooded woman was his. The crowd murmured in disbelief, some chuckling at the mountain man's folly, others eyeing him with pity. Elias paid his solitary $1, the bill trembling slightly in his grip, and approached the woman, who stood motionless, her face obscured by the deep shadow of her hood. He unlocked the chains with a key Harlan tossed him, his fingers brushing her skin, soft, unexpectedly warm, and led her out into the crisp evening air without a word. The journey back to his cabin was silent, the woman trailing behind him like a ghost, her steps light on the forest floor. Night fell swiftly, stars piercing the canopy above as they climbed higher into the mountains, the path illuminated only by the pale moon. Elias's mind raced with questions. Who was she? Why had she been auctioned? Regret gnawed at him. He could barely feed himself, let alone another soul. Yet, as they reached the cabin, he pushed open the door, the warmth of the dying fire greeting them. Sit, he said gruffly, gesturing to a worn chair by the hearth. She obeyed, her movements graceful, almost ethereal. He busied himself stoking the flames, adding logs that crackled to life, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Finally, he turned to her, his voice tentative, "You can take off the hood now. Ain't no one here but us." Slowly, her hands rose, slender fingers pulling back the fabric to reveal a face that stole the breath from his lungs. Her hair cascaded like midnight silk, framing eyes the color of storm-tossed seas, deep blue, flecked with gold, and lips curved in a faint, enigmatic smile. But it was when she spoke that Elias's world shattered and reformed in an instant. "Thank you," she said, her voice a melody, soft yet resonant, carrying an accent that evoked distant lands, perhaps the misty Isles of Scotland or the emerald hills of Ireland. In that moment, he knew, she was the one. It wasn't just the timbre, the way it wrapped around his soul like a warm blanket, it was the recognition, as if her words unlocked a door in his heart he hadn't known was locked. Memories flooded him, not his own, but fragments of dreams he'd long dismissed, a woman in the mist, calling his name across time. Elias staggered back, leaning against the rough-hewn table, his eyes wide. "Who are you?" he whispered. She rose, her presence filling the small space, and began to weave her tale, her words painting pictures in the firelight. Her name was Alara Voss, born in a coastal village far to the east, where the sea met the sky in eternal embrace. She was no ordinary woman, descended from a line of seers, gifted, or cursed, with visions of the future and echoes of the past. Her village had shunned her, labeling her a harbinger of doom when her prophecies foretold a great storm that devoured their homes. Fleeing persecution, she had crossed oceans and lands, only to fall into the hands of opportunistic traders who saw profit in her mystery, auctioning her off like chattel in remote towns. But Alara had seen this moment in her dreams, the mountain man with kind eyes hidden behind a gruff exterior, the one destined to be her anchor in a turbulent world. As she spoke, Elias felt the walls around his heart crumble, her voice was a balm to his loneliness, each syllable drawing him closer. He shared his own story that night, halting at first, then pouring forth like a mountain stream after the thaw, the loss of his parents, the isolation that had become his shield. They talked until the fire dwindled to embers, the connection between them sparking like flint on steel. In the days that followed, Alara transformed Elias's existence. She moved through the cabin with quiet efficiency, mending his tattered clothes with nimble fingers, foraging herbs he hadn't known existed, infusing his meager meals with flavors that danced on the tongue. But it was her visions that truly bound them. One evening, as snow dusted the peaks, she clutched his hand, her eyes glazing over. "A shadow approaches," she murmured, "a band of outlaws, seeking gold in these hills. They will come at dawn." Elias, skeptical yet, compelled by the certainty in her voice, prepared, barricading the door, sharpening his axe, setting traps in the underbrush. Sure enough, as the first light crept over the ridge, hoofbeats echoed, and 5 rough men emerged from the trees, rifles glinting. Elias met them with fierce determination, his axe swinging true, aided by Alara's warnings that allowed him to anticipate their moves. One outlaw fell into a pit, another ensnared by a rope, and the rest fled into the mist, cursing the haunted mountain. Victory forged their bond deeper. Elias looked at Alara with awe, realizing her gift was no curse but a shield for them both. As winter tightened its grip, their companionship blossomed into something profound. Walks through snow-laden forests became confessions of the soul, Elias admitting his fear of vulnerability, Alara revealing the weight of foresight that often isolated her. One starlit night, under a blanket of constellations, he took her hand, his rough palm against her smooth one. "I paid $1 for you," he said, a rare smile cracking his face, "but I'd give my life to keep you." She leaned in, her lips brushing his in a kiss that ignited the cold air, their hearts sinking like the rhythm of the earth itself. Spring arrived with a burst of life, wildflowers carpeting the meadows, rivers swelling with meltwater. Alara's visions guided them to hidden treasures, a vein of quartz sparkling with flecks of gold, enough to trade for supplies that eased their hardships. But not all visions were benevolent. One fateful afternoon, as they gathered berries, Alara froze, her face paling. "A great flood," she whispered, "the river will rage, swallowing the town below." Elias, trusting her implicitly now, rode to Willow Creek, warning the skeptical townsfolk. Many scoffed, but some heeded, evacuating to higher ground. When the storm hit, thunder roaring like angry gods, the river burst its banks, homes splintering like matchsticks. Those who listened survived, hailing Elias as a hero, though he credited Alara's gift. Gratitude flowed in food, tools, even offers of land, but Elias and Alara chose their mountain solitude, their love a sanctuary. Yet, challenges persisted. Alara's past caught up when a shadowy figure arrived, a tracker from her village, demanding her return. She's a witch, he snarled, brandishing a warrant forged in ignorance. Elias stood firm, his axe ready, but it was Alara who confronted him, her voice steady. I am no witch, but a woman with sight. Leave, or face the storm I foresee in your path. Intimidated by her piercing gaze and the gathering clouds, the tracker fled. Their triumph solidified their union. In a simple ceremony by a crystal stream, witnessed by the whispering trees, they vowed eternal partnership. Summers passed in bliss, Elias teaching Alara the ways of the mountains, tracking deer, reading the weather in the clouds, while she opened his eyes to the world's mysteries, sharing lore from her homeland. Their cabin expanded, a nursery added when Alara's belly swelled with life, her visions assuring a healthy child. The birth was arduous, the night filled with cries, but dawn brought a daughter, Mira, with eyes like her mother's and strength like her father's. As years wove on, their family grew, 2 sons following, the mountains echoing with laughter absent for so long. Elias, no longer poor in spirit or pocket, watched his children play, marveling at the twist of fate that began with a single $1. Alara's voice, that first utterance of thanks, remained the melody of his life, a reminder that destiny whispers to those who listen. Through trials, a harsh winter claiming livestock, a forest fire licking at their door, they endured, her foresight and his resilience an unbreakable tandem. In quieter moments, by the fire, Elias would hold her close, whispering, "You were always the one." Their story spread through the valleys, a legend of the mountain man and his seer bride, inspiring wanderers to seek their own fates. And as the sun set on their golden years, Elias and Alara sat on the porch, hands entwined, watching the mist roll in, knowing their love was etched in the stars. If this tale of destiny, courage, and unbreakable love captivated your heart, imagine the countless other stories waiting to unfold. Tales of mystery, romance, and adventure that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Don't miss out. Hit that subscribe button now, turn on notifications, and join our community of dreamers and story lovers. Your next favorite story is just a click away. Subscribe today and let the magic continue.